we had whittled down whatever ideas we had been working on to the set of songs, the core group of songs that we went to the studio planning to make that record with. Breadcrumb Trail, I think, was the last song that we wrote for Spiderland as a full band. It was definitely among one of the last things I can remember doing before we left for Chicago to record it.
So the first song on Spiderland is Breadcrumb Trail, and that I think of it as Todd Brashear's song. You know, the way you brought songs to Slint practice was like either you had a riff or you had a couple riffs that seemed to fit together. And Todd had a couple riffs that fit together on guitar. You know, the first riff on that with the harmonics. And he had ideas where I would descend on guitar. He would, like Brian would ascend, you know, like just little things. He had ideas for it. And so all of us would just sort of attack the riffs that anyone brought in and see what we came up with. And anybody could write a bass line. Anybody could come up with this or that. It wasn't like one person did everything. It was whoever had an idea where it sounded best.
Breadcrumb Trail, I wrote all the riffs. So we all arranged it. But yeah, I wrote all the riffs to that one, which I think I've said this before. This is not any major news or whatever, but in retrospect, I think I've subconsciously kind of ripped off the song, one part of the song Candy Corn by Captain Beefheart for Breadcrumb Trail. Like the kind of spacey part where it goes out into the stratosphere a little bit or whatever. I'm pretty sure that's somewhat of a rip-off of Candy Corn by Captain Beefheart. I just kind of presented the riffs and then we worked on arranging it. I mean, I'm sure I was trying to write it to sound like a Slint song, because why wouldn't I guess? I mean, that was the band I was playing in, you know, but they had their harmonics going on at different times.
I'd never thought about that was his attempt at a Slint song, because he knocked it out of the park. And that's a great example of how Todd is just like totally aligned with us musically, I think.
I do remember Brian gave me a chance to write some lyrics, and I'm sure they were terrible because I'm really not much of a songwriter in general. Like, I don't have that drive to like write songs and create. Like, I've had people be like, man, that song's so good, why don't you write more songs? I'm like, I don't know, because some people just have that drive to do that, and I guess I don't really. But I do remember writing some lyrics, and I'm sure they were terrible, and he just went and wrote some lyrics, you know. Thank goodness.
I remember writing lyrics with Brian for that song, like mostly him, but maybe me sort of collaborating a little on that, which was cool.
I do have a memory of being at Britt's house, and you know, we practiced in the basement, and being upstairs and just talking about Breadcrumb Trail, and more just me overhearing Britt and Brian talking about it. I guess we were talking about it as a band, but I was just listening to them talk about the lyrics. And it was cool because they would talk about the music as an instrumental, and Britt would say stuff like, well, this part sounds like like a roller coaster or something, you know, and this part sounds like, you know, you're at a fair. Like, I guess I always thought of instrumental music in that same way, where I just imagined stories that went along with them. That's how I understand how to write it. So I have to have some sort of visual idea. It's not a narrative or anything, but it's just, you know, this makes me feel this way. And so I pursue that feeling. But like, it seemed like it was an instrumental song that they were kind of reading a narrative into. And then it seemed like Brian wrote a story around those ideas.
I wish I could remember our discussions of this stuff, I feel like I do remember, at least with Breadcrumb Trail, sitting out on the deck behind Britt's parents' house, and Britt and I sort of like working through what the lyrics were and how it was going to sound in the context of the record. In the absence of me actually performing any of the vocals in the practice space, basically a lot of the final arrangements were sort of settled based on, I need this much space and we should transition to this part, or let's at least try it that way and see if I can make this vocal idea a fit, which for me consisted of 4-track. Borrowing Todd's 4-track and recording these vocal ideas on top of Jambox recordings from the basement.
So actually, that's probably worth mentioning, but like I recorded Slint playing a show using my cassette 4-track before I was in the band. They opened up for Big Black at this VFW hall. And so Brian borrowed my 4-track and used my recording and used that as a way to demo the vocals for Tweez. So that was already another connection I had with them, I guess. And then I think what he did for Spiderland was, I think we just recorded all the songs at practice, or we used live. It's probably a combination. I think on that box set, there's a demo where he took a live bootleg that somebody sent us and used my 4-track to record vocals on top of it. So he did kind of demo them just like at his parents' house. I think he did it like in the garage, sitting in a car, just to like get isolation and privacy or whatever. But yeah, most of the vocals hadn't really heard that much until we were in the studio.
We almost imagined, rhythmically vocals maybe when we were working them up, the songs. And then as it got further and further along, I feel like they were sort of structured to accept vocals, like just we kind of felt that rhythmically or something. And then once they were actually written and stuff, we might, change some things after that.
Vocals with Slint were always the last thing. Like constructing the music for the song, it had to stand as an instrumental, I guess. I feel like since Brian was doing the vocals, he was probably thinking of vocals the whole time. But for the rest of us, it was just it was an instrumental song that we were working on, and then we thought about vocals. And Britt wrote, I think, all the words that he would say on the record, and he did a number of vocals. Vocals were left to Britt and Brian, and we just trusted, of course, like whatever they came up with. I definitely had a hint of what the vocals were going to do because, I would see like some of the lyrics that Britt was writing, just like hung up on the wall in the basement, or I'd hear like 4-track demos that they were working on. To me, my job was the music, and that was Britt and Brian's job. And I loved it. I always loved to see what they came up with.
So the lyrics on Spiderland, I didn't write all of them. I did not write the Donne Man. Britt also wrote lyrics for Nosferatu Man. And I think we both had the benefit of the 4-track, the loner 4-track from Todd, and being able to work through vocal parts that were either not practical to execute in rehearsal or just simply inaudible. The lyrics and in a broader sense, the production of the record and the sequencing of the songs, those things were kind of all the piece for me. And Breadcrumb Trail was the last song that I wrote lyrics to. And I think I knew at that point that it was going to be the first track on the record, or at least I was hoping it would be.
The sequence of Spiderland was really interesting because we'd already recorded all the songs, and we were trying to figure out like an order and side breaks and stuff. And we were all coming up with our own, like, this is what I think it was. And the one I thought was best was the most predictable one, where it's top heavy, where I thought the best songs were at the front, and then the record gets worse as it goes on. The kind of like not as strong songs go later, or like mood oriented songs, and then putting Good Morning Captain as the first song. To me, that I thought that just made sense, and I think the majority of us did it top heavy, but Brian had a sequence that I thought was messed up because it put Good Morning Captain at the end. And I was like, man, I'll be surprised if anybody makes it to the end of this record. I was like, it's going to be such a test of patience to get through all this, to get to the best songs. I didn't like his sequence, but the more I gave it a chance, the more I started to understand it. Like everyone agreed that it was the best sequence. Oh yeah, I remember what it was. He wanted to cut, like, we had two other songs. Like we had a version of Glenn and I think Pam that never came out. And he wanted to cut those two. And, we were still in the punk rock hardcore world where you were lucky to record and everything you recorded just came out. Like you didn't keep songs because you spent money, to record all this. And they were good songs. Like anyway, it didn't make sense. But we never actually finished the vocals for Pam. So I understood cutting that, even though I loved that song. But it seemed weird to cut down, drop two songs. So we only have 6 songs on the album. I did not understand Brian's thinking at first. And like I said, I love not understanding and then, and then figuring it out. Like usually if I'm confused initially, it's a good sign.
I think Britt and Brian were more of the like artwork sequencing type people. Like maybe they had more of the vision of all of it together. Plus me, I was the new guy, so I kind of kept my mouth shut on a lot of stuff. Although watching some of the old footage of us practicing, I was like, damn, I'm being pretty assertive there. I wonder what happened, because I was kind of bossing them all around about working on Breadcrumb Trail or whatever. But they were more of the overall vision guys.
I don't remember us having too much of an idea of any sort of song order, except maybe Brian did, because he really pioneered the song order, and which songs ended up on the record. We kind of left a couple out, and he made it sort of like a concept album. But as far as the sequencing, definitely Brian had a concept of that, like based on, I guess, the lyrics and the music. But yeah, I think it kind of works that way.
The thing I really like about the sequence is that, and I think Britt pointed this out to me later, was that with Breadcrumb Trail, you immediately have to enter this world. And if you stick with it, you stay in that world until the record ends. And that's really true. Like there's so much atmosphere on that record, and I don't know how you record atmosphere. And I don't think there is a how to, but it's just like one of those things where everything aligned. Like it really is like calling the album Spiderland too. Like you do enter Spiderland once you drop the needle on Breadcrumb Trail.
The sun was setting by the time we left. We walked across the deserted lot. We were tired, but we each managed to smile. At the gate, I said goodnight to the fortune teller. The carnival sign threw colored shadows on her face, but I could tell she was blushing.
It just seemed appropriate. the thematic sort of coming of age sort of storytelling. I know that Brett and I's talked about that for sure. It may have been sort of a late breaking thing, but I mean, we were just at that point in our lives. We were just, just living on our own, working, conferring, just the first inklings of like making a living, leaving the nest, And I think Britt and I both appreciated songs and songwriters that managed to establish an aesthetic of their own, but were not averse to just use like super, super common like imagery and, sort of narratives to express things. It seemed like a humanizing sort of softening of some of the maybe potentially pretentious or sort of like, we were very precious at times with the music, I think. Certainly we were during the recording of the Spiderland record. And I think that the lyrics and those themes, the coming of age and the sort of like well-worn sort of narrative references, I think they helped in our minds to just like demystify or sort of make the music and the songs more familiar or less alien